Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Trade Talk. We are now within 24 hours of the first final between Collingwood and Melbourne. We have got tips up on the hub if you want to check that one out as well. A blockbuster way to start this September campaign. Last week we took a look at the 10 sides not playing finals, but our attention turns now to the 8 sides who are. Darren Parkin is my name, still sitting in Carl's chair, and sitting in mine is Tom Happel. Tom, nice to be alongside you again. It all gets underway.
Great to be back with you this week, Daz. Yeah, really looking forward to the first week of finals. 4 really even contests, I feel, and the market, as we'll discuss later, I think in sort of 3 of the 4 have perhaps underrated the outsider, I think.
Absolutely. We welcome Todd Davey back from Stats Insider. We did speak last week about their value plays in the last couple of rounds. They had in the second last round St Kilda as market value against Geelong, and then certainly in the last round with the Kangaroos as well in their fast finish to the season. Todd, nice to have you back, and I guess we're getting ready for the premiership markets to bounce all over the place in the next probably in the next 3 or 4 days, but can you shed some light on how that market's looking before we start?
Yeah, good to be back, guys. So we've got Brisbane and Melbourne as the top 2 standouts going into the finals, but that'll flip on its head if Collingwood can get over Melbourne. So Melbourne currently 24.2% premier chances with Collingwood at 21. That'll shift dramatically if Collingwood get up. So that's why we're thinking that the first final in 24 hours' time is going to be the most important final for the premiership shaping market.
Absolutely, and more on that in a moment. We touched on the Brownlow predictor last week. Obviously no votes on offer for the remainder of the season, so the Brownlow medalist is locked away in an envelope somewhere, but that is determined already once those votes will obviously officially be counted in a few weeks. But since we did last speak, Marcus Bontempelli has eased a fraction. Nick Dacos has re-established favouritism on the exchange, and then Petrarca and Neil not too far behind. How are Stats Insiders seeing that race?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate to what we were saying in the lead-up that Nick Dacos wasn't going to get many votes by virtue of not playing, but Marcus Bontempelli didn't really stand out like we thought he would. So as a result, Nick Dacos is our 36% favourite for the medal. That's to take it home. And we've got all the information up on statsinsider.com.au/AFL/Brownlow, and we've been working in conjunction with Betfair on this one, so we're pretty proud of the work that's gone in. The report will be ready to download in 2 weeks' time, but from now, the Brownlow medal predictor information's up, and we've got Nick Dacos winning the Brownlow from Bontempelli and Zach Butters.
And we are going to have a live Brownlow show on the night as well. We'll be working with the Stats Insider modelling and the like to track how all of that is going on the Monday of Grand Final week, of course. Now, we could do things a little bit differently with what we would normally do with a deep dive. We'll jump into those finals very shortly, but we'll start off with a little segment we used to play around with on SEN called Rapid Fire, where we throw a few questions around and get the first response, which is, I guess, the most instinctive response in terms of what you're thinking at the time, the most accurate reflection of your thoughts, if you will. I'll throw a few your way, Tom. I'll bring Todd in for these as well, sure. But he did tease a little bit on it at the start. Does the winner of Collingwood-Melbourne win the flag?
I think the winner will make the grand final, Daz, for sure, but I think it's probably too difficult, too early to declare them flag winners just yet. I think certainly in a commanding position, as they wouldn't have to leave the MCG or final series, and being 2 Melbourne teams, obviously that's extremely helpful, but as we know, anything can happen on the day, so not quite prepared to label them winners of the flag.
And Todd, I think you mentioned before that you think the winner of that game dictates largely the predictor from here?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the winner of that game won't have to leave Melbourne, so it's a big leg up. We currently have the Demons as the 52% probable winners of that game. Given they're the outsiders in the Betfair market, Daz, what are your thoughts on that game? Do you think it's a win for Melbourne, or do you think Collingwood are in the box seat going into Thursday night?
Yeah, I think it's very close to 50-50. I think Melbourne have shortened a little bit. There's still marginal outsiders on the exchange, and I think the weather might suit them a little bit. I mean, I've been big on Collingwood all year, but I think that's a very big opportunity for the Ds, and we'll discuss why in a moment. Another one, Tom, there's been some speculation, mainly around the concussion protocols, that maybe they should move the week off from between the last round and the first week of the finals to between the prelim and the grand final. I know not many people like American comparisons, but like they do before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Daz, I'll probably disagree with that sentiment. I think the week off after the home and away season finishes is the go as it stands. And I think it builds anticipation for fans and allows injured players to have more recovery time leading into that first week of finals. And I also believe it would be a penalty for the qualifying final winners as well, because they would essentially be playing 2 games in the best part of a month, and I don't think that's enough prep leading into a grand final. I think that would be 2 penals. So I probably disagree with that statement.
Do the Brisbane Lions need to make a grand final in this era?
That's one I do agree with, absolutely. I think they're the 6th oldest team in the comp, Brisbane, and right now is undoubtedly their peak. I think Neil, Danaher, Zorko, Gunston, Jared Lyons, Charlie Cameron, they're all 29 years old or 30 years old. And I think a lot of pressure, I suppose, heading into that qualifying final on Saturday night at home lies with Brisbane, because their era is certainly at the present time, and I think if they were to lose that, I don't think they would be able to win the flag this year.
It's their 5th consecutive year in and around the top 4, which is it's obviously rare that a side is that strong for that long, so it's a credit to them. But Todd, you did mention Brisbane. So 2020, they obviously played the whole final series in Queensland. It was their best chance. They won every home game that year until they lost the prelim to Geelong. This is only the 2nd time they've ever won every home game in the same season. Even in their premiership years in 1, 2 and 3, they dropped the odd home game. You mentioned off the top that the predictor has them a pretty decent chance to make the decider.
Yeah, we've got them at 26% to win the grand final and 53.8% just to make the grand final. So as you mentioned, undefeated at home. You'd back them against any team in the league at the Gabba. It's unlikely they'll leave the Gabba until grand final day if they continue to play the way they've gone. And as you guys mentioned, they've made some pretty decisive moves, like bringing in Jack Gunston in the twilight of his career. I think it really is time for Brisbane to finally make that grand final. And even if they don't win it, it's pretty disappointing given their state of the list and their consistency at the top.
Beaten every side in the 8 except Port Adelaide, who they play this week. That was back in round 1 away from home. They've beaten Collingwood, Melbourne, Sydney, St Kilda at home. So good record against those finalists as well. Another one for you, Tom. Are St Kilda still being underrated?
I think so, Daz. Yeah, I think winning a final would constitute a big tick for Ross Lyon in his first year back in the fold at St Kilda, and I think if they were to win this week, I think that would have exceeded all expectations for the year. And I think in terms of the market this week, I think $2.30 currently on offer for the Saints or thereabouts on the exchange. I think that's certainly overs, and that's underrating their chances this week.
When we preview that game, I'll get Todd's thoughts on that market. And similar to this next question, can Carlton make a preliminary final?
Not for me this year, Daz. I think they'll learn a lot from this final series, having been out of the fold for the best part of a decade. And I think one finals win for long-suffering Blues fans will be seen as a success. But I think it's probably a stretch to suggest that a prelim is on the cards.
And you've got a few that you're going to throw back our way.
Absolutely, Daz. So I'll start with, apart from Brisbane and Port, in your opinion, is every game in week 1 of the finals a genuine flip of the coin?
I certainly think 2 of them are. I think St Kilda GWS and Collingwood Melbourne 50-50. I think Sydney are closer than the market would suggest, but I would still have Carlton as a favourite in that game. So maybe not as strong a favourite as they actually are, but I would agree on 2 of them, but Carlton marginal favourite for mine.
Next one, Collingwood have no advantage this year finishing on top of the ladder. Should they be entitled to a 75-25 ticket allocation to make it a genuine home ground advantage in the qualifying final?
No, probably not. I think they've earned the right to play at home, which they've done. It just so happens that their opponent is a co-tenant. It can happen that way. They could have got Port Adelaide, conceivably. They could have got Sydney or the Giants, but they just as likely could have got Carlton or as it turns out, Melbourne. So I still think they've got the advantages of it in that if they win, they get a week off and a home preliminary final. I feel that the system is the way it is and could have got a Marvel tenant. It's just, sure. I just think that's one of those things that falls that way. And I mean, it's a nice little bonus for Melbourne, but luck of the draw.
Todd, I'll throw to you here. Zach Butters or Clayton Oliver, pick one only.
I'm going with Clayton Oliver. I think we've forgotten about how great this guy is, how versatile he is. He's got ball-winning ability, he can kick goals. Zach Butters is a great player, don't get me wrong, but he's only proven it his top line for this season and maybe a little bit before that, but Clayton Oliver's been consistently one of the best for the better part of 5 years. I'm taking him every time.
Sure.
Agreed.
Daz, who should win Coach of the Year?
At the moment, Craig McRae, I still feel. I mean, Collingwood had a very good season last year, and I don't know if he won it last year, if it went to the Premiers. It may just automatically go to the Premiers. I'm not sure, but I think he would certainly be right up there. And then you look at probably the efforts of Ken Hinkley in revitalising Port Adelaide, Michael Voss's resurgence at Carlton, Ross Lyons' growth at St Kilda, but I think Craig McRae still gets that mantle, provided the finals don't go pear-shaped.
Yep. And last but not least, which team has the most at stake in week one of the finals, Daz?
Brisbane, I think, for the reasons we spoke about earlier. I think they should win it, but they will lose a significant advantage if they drop that game. Obviously, they'll host the semi, probably win that, but then have to play at the MCG in a preliminary final against Collingwood or Melbourne. So I think it's make or break for the Lions this week for mine. So that is our look at some of those key questions coming in. We'll turn our attention to the deep dive and look at the markets for these. So tomorrow night, Collingwood and Melbourne, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, the Thursday night final at the MCG. You would think that the crowd figure will well and truly have a 9 in front of it for this game. Did Collingwood get their mojo back with that big win over Essendon in the last round? I thought Melbourne were excellent in their win over Sydney, given they didn't have to win it. I thought they really dug in and produced a terrific result. Forward line issues for them, obviously with Melksham's injury and a few other woes. McDonald kicked 5 or 6 in the twos. Does he play? Bailey Fritsch was in a moon boot, but looks like he'll be all right. Throwing it your way first, Todd. The market has this close-ish to even money, but Melbourne's still outsiders. Stats Insider have it a different way.
52%. So we've almost a flip of the coin, but slightly in favour of the Demons. That's negligible. But given what you were saying about their forward line woes, do you think Clayton Oliver's return means that they can put Christian Petrarca up forward and give him that other avenue towards goal?
I think so, yeah. And they've got to, Tom, I'd imagine, play a little bit more of that smaller hybrid forward line, and whether they pick a McDonald or something like that to, just to give them a bit of that structure. But they will miss Melksham, it's fair to say.
Certainly does. I think also one thing to consider is the weather. Armageddon is forecast for Thursday and Friday night, so those two finals could be affected by that. Obviously, Melbourne, a very good contested ball team, and I believe if the weather comes, I think that'll really suit their mids. Clayton Oliver, Petrarca, Viney, love the tough stuff in the middle, and I think that'll really suit them. Obviously, Nick Dacos has been ruled out with injury, and that's a big loss for the Pies there. But in the last 5 years, Collingwood actually hold a 6-2 advantage head-to-head over the Ds. So that's an interesting one to consider for punters heading into Thursday night's clash. One for me, Daz, I think Jacob Van Rooyen's a really important piece of the puzzle for the Ds this week. Obviously, we've discussed the depleted forward line of Melbourne, and he'll be asked to take on a big role to spoil the intercept markers of Collingwood and bring the ball to ground for the Smalls. And I think if he can also chip in with perhaps 1 or 2 goals, that'll go a long way to the Ds claiming a result in this one.
Yeah, he kicked the stealer last time, which was the Queen's birthday match, and Melbourne kicked 8 goals, 18 that day, so they were inaccurate, but hung on and won by 4 points. No Ben Brown or Tom McDonald in that game either. Bailey Fritsch kicked 3 goals, 3 in a low-scoring game. Van Rooyen, as we said, kicked the goal. Petrarca played sort of mid-forward and had 28 possessions in that one. For Collingwood, they had a few out in that game as well. Obviously, Jordan De Goey didn't play for one in that particular contest. Seal Sidebottom was also out of that lineup. So slightly different teams from when they did last meet, but Melbourne can take a degree of confidence from that.
I think if the Pies are within striking distance 3/4 time, first 10 minutes of the last, I think watch out, because they've scored the second most goals in the comp this year, and they can pile them on in quick succession. So I think watch out for them to be finishing strongly. And just to finish off, DeGoey and Petrarca, that could be one of the great finals matchups, I feel, one for the ages. So very exciting game and looking forward to Thursday night.
Yeah, they never believe they're beaten, Collingwood. Their ability to come back from positions is extraordinarily admirable. They obviously nearly won that prelim last year when they were completely shot to bits against Sydney. So they can finish with a flurry. I guess just going around the panel, your tip for that, Tom?
I'll go with the D's, Daz, in a minor upset, I feel.
Todd?
Yeah, I'm going with the D's as well, and just supporting the Stats Insider view of 52% probability.
Yeah, I'm 50-50, just leaning slightly the way of Melbourne, but I have been big on Collingwood all year. So for me, it's a genuine 50-50 game. But yeah, agree on that sentiment around the weather. Carlton and Sydney, a Friday night elimination final. Carlton's first final series since 2013, which was obviously the controversial final series where they came in, the first, I guess, in their own right, if you will, since 2011. They take on a Sydney side who are the reigning grand finalists, who are obviously a frequent feature in the finals. And Carlton $1.54, Sydney $2.82. And Todd, I know Tom's going to be big on this one, but Sydney represent a bit of value with Stats Insider?
Yeah, 3% edge in the market. So while they're 38% win probability, the value is with the Swans. I just want to throw it back to you guys quickly on that one. We spoke about Brisbane being the most under pressure. What about Carlton, considering their pretty disastrous finish to last year's season? And you know, the expectations going into this year, it seems like there should be a little bit more pressure on Carlton. And you know, they go in as probably one of the higher favourites for the round. Is there a lot of pressure on Michael Voss and Carlton?
I think so, Todd. Yeah, that $1.50 at the moment on the Betfair exchange, and I think that that represents significant unders. Obviously, given their lack of finals pedigree and Sydney being a really finals hardened outfit, I think Sydney certainly are being a bit disrespected there, and Carlton will have all the pressure, the home crowd, the expectation. I think the media expect Carlton to break their duck. So certainly Sydney will really value that underdog tag, and I think that could be proved decisive in the end.
Carlton had won 9 in a row going into the last round when they lost to the Giants. Sydney had won 6 in a row heading into that Melbourne game, which they got beaten in on the final day of the home and away season. Obviously, Sydney have had their smattering of controversy, but we've got to remember that Adelaide game, which was controversial. They were 6 goals up at three-quarter time, which is a pretty impressive form line, given Adelaide's strength when they play it at home soil. How are you splitting it, Tom?
Yeah, so just a quick one also, a quick fast fact, I suppose. So 5 of Sydney's last 8 games were played away from home, and they won 4 of them. So I don't think the MCG will hold any fears for them. And with the retirement of Buddy, Sydney's forward line has, I suppose, an element of unpredictability about it, with Haywood, Heaney, Papley, McLean, Logan, McDonald all having capabilities of popping up and kicking a bag. So I think this game will be a lot closer than people are suggesting, and at the $2.80 on offer, I think the Swans are certainly a bet at the price. Yeah,
I think that's a well-argued point. I said I think Carlton, for mine, are favourites, but I wouldn't have the market probably set as wide apart as it is. So I'm tipping Carlton, but yeah, the value certainly sits with Sydney, so whether you look at handicaps or something like that, potentially as well. The Saturday afternoon elimination final, so St Kilda, their only finals campaign since 2011 was in the COVID year of 2020, so it's their first Melbourne final since 2011 when Ross Lyon was coaching them. So some parallels with Carlton there, and the Giants, tremendous recovery from 3-7. They've got themselves to 13-10, winning 10 of their last 13 matches. Their record away from home has been particularly strong. St Kilda finishing the season well, having started it well. There was a bit of a flat spot in the middle. These two sides have never met at the MCG. St Kilda have won the last 4 meetings between them, including this year, which was at Giants Stadium in the middle of the year, just before the Giants went on that run. Todd, so St Kilda $2.28, Giants $1.77. This is one of the games that I think is pretty close to 50-50, but how does Stats Insider see it?
Giants are the 58% probable winners there. 2 teams that I believe are under the least amount of pressure going in. Bit of a free swing, and it's great to see them both in. But one for you, Daz, as a big Saints man. Would you have preferred this game to be at Marvel Stadium, or was MCG okay for the Saints?
I think MCG for a couple of reasons. One, I guess the romantic football fan, it feels like finals at the MCG. I mean, Marvel they've played one final there, St Kilda, and every now and then there's a final there. But for me, the MCG it just feels like a final. It's almost half a final if you play at Marvel, or a big home and away game. But also, I think the elements, St Kilda generally play the MCG okay. So yeah, I had no issue with it. I know a lot of Saints fans wanted it at their home ground, but for me, you make the finals, you play at the MCG. So that for me was a big tick. So, Todd, sorry, how would you frame that, mate? If it's 228 on the exchange, what would 58% represent?
So, Stats Insider Odds has GWS at 172 fair odds. So, 177 on the exchange right now is a 2% edge. So, not exactly a high edge on GWS going in, but as you mentioned, 50-50. Saints had the wood on the Giants a bit, and going into that game, it's hard to predict, but the Giants were the edge in terms of our predictive analytics model.
And Tom, how are you splitting it?
I certainly echo both of your sentiments, guys. I think this will be the closest game of week one of the finals, with both teams being fantastic defensively. So the Giants ranked 6th overall for defence, and the Saints ranked 2nd overall. GWS come into this game having won 9 of their past 11, and the Saints have won just 5 of their past 11. So certainly I think this will be a close encounter, and it may hinge on Sam Taylor's availability, Daz, because he's obviously missed the final home and away game of the season due to a hamstring injury, and they'll really need him to play to curtail Max King's influence. So it really could hinge on his availability, and that's how close I feel this game may be.
Yeah, and the Toby Bedford second appeal, which will be heard somewhere soon ahead of that particular clash, with the Giants taking that one a little bit further. Brisbane and Port Adelaide, they met in round 1 of the season, and Port Adelaide thumped Brisbane at the Adelaide Oval on that occasion. The Lions, from that point on, have been unbeaten when they've gone back to their home venue. Port rediscovering some good form. Strange old year for them. They won 11 or 12 in a row, then dropped 4 on the bounce, but look like they've picked up the pace again over the last few weeks to finish 3rd. Obviously, those losses have cost them the chance to have this game in Adelaide. Instead, it is in Brisbane.
Yep.
Brisbane are the shortest priced favourite, Todd, of the opening week of the finals. How is Stats Insider seeing it?
68 win % probability on the Lions, and 2% edge. We have them at $1.47 with our fair odds, and currently 152 on their Betfair exchange. So we already think they're going to win, and we think they're a good bet on the exchange as well.
Tom, how are you seeing it?
I think this will really hinge on the midfield battle, Daz. I think in round 1, Port's midfielders, Horne-Francis, Butters, Rosie, Boak, Ollie Wines obviously got on top of Brisbane's midfield, and that saw them win in a big result for them. I think it was sort of 40 points plus in round 1. And I think in this game, again, that'll prove decisive. So obviously Port's defence is undermanned and sort of undersized. So if Port's mids can help out on the defensive, I suppose, side of things, that'll go a long way. And winning sort of contested ball, that'll go a long way to protecting their defence. And as we know, Brisbane's have kicked the most goals of any team in 2023, and I think if the Port's defence is to be exposed in any way, then Brisbane at the Gabba, it spells danger. So that'll be a very important, I suppose, battle there. But certainly from my perspective, Daz, I think Brisbane have all the pressure on them this week. Port, they'll love the underdog mentality. I heard Ollie Wines on SEN speak about Oppenheimer, and I'm not sure where he was quite going with that comment, but I think something to do with the all-in mentality of the team. It takes a team to build success, and so they're obviously channeling that, which is pretty bizarre. But certainly Brisbane have all the pressure on them, and I think if they were to win this week, they'll win their way into the grand final.
Surprised they let that one out, Port. I thought they might have kept that internal and just tried to keep a lid on that and use it for what they want to use it for, but maybe not put that on the public record. Huge. I mean, Port Adelaide, obviously, they've had a couple of strong runs to prelims in recent years and have then fallen short. If they were to win this game and get the home prelim, that would obviously heap pressure back on them, but for now, yes, certainly I think more pressure on Brisbane, who didn't kick straight in the last round when they beat the Saints, and that at times in the past had been something that troubles them, but I think if they straighten up, they've got a bit too much firepower, but you never know. We look towards buy, hold and sell. Normally we'd throw the Brownlow predictor in there, but we touched on that a bit off the top. But in terms of the buys, I wanted to give a shout out to Daniel Rich, who announced his retirement. Obviously a Brisbane Lion from way back in 2009 when he won the Rising Star. And if they were to win the flag, it would be unfortunate, obviously, but he's not a part of it. But magnificent kick of the footy, Daniel Rich, and certainly a joy to watch him play.
Absolutely, Daz. I'll buy that as well. But mine for this week is the pre-finals buy. I'm big on this. I think there's a lot of, I suppose, talk in the media that it kills momentum from the home and away season. But I certainly think that it only builds an appetite for fans heading into the finals. And we also want to see the best players playing. And the week off allows banged up players to get some rest in. So I'll throw some names at you like Max King, Sam Taylor, Blake Acres, Darcy Moore, Todd Marshall, Tom Papley. They're all really important players for their respective clubs. And I think without the pre-finals bye, they would have definitely missed week one and it would have diminished the product. So I'm firm on this. I think that the pre-finals bye is certainly a buy.
Todd, are you big on the buy?
I would love to agree, but given the weather that Melbourne put up last week and what's expected this week, it's hard to agree with you there because we could be in for some pretty poor finals given the weather, but the weather was great last week. But the point is terrific about player availability. Yeah, completely agree.
I haven't got a hold this week, but I do want to sell the Bedford suspension based on the evidence that was put forward. Now, I think he's probably paying the price a little bit for not being we saw with Trent Cotchin a few years ago. And I thought the evidence where he said, so basically he has said, I don't think I got him in the head. Zach Fisher said, no, he didn't get me in the head. Carlton's medical report said, no, there was no head contact. And the tribunals looked at it and thought, looking at the vision, you might have got him in the head. So therefore there's enough area or enough grey area, if you will, for us to suspend him. And I'm like, well, what's the point of asking for evidence from the victim in this situation? Yep. And if the victim doesn't think he's been hit, and Zach Fisher even said he went off and they gave him a concussion test, and he said, what is this for? Nothing has actually happened to me. So, I'm selling that. I think that the evidence didn't justify a suspension for mine.
I think it's important to note as well, Daz, that the Giants weren't copying that decision, and they're headed off to the appeals board, which I think they sit, I believe, tomorrow night or somewhere around then. And if he's to play, that'll go a long way to the Giants, being successful.
Yeah, he's
in week one.
Important part of their finals pressure, that's for sure. Your forward pressure, rather, your sell?
My sell for this week, I don't want shares in Carlton at $1.50 on Friday night. I think that's far too short, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. And good luck to the Blues faithful who deserve to see some success after so long in the wilderness. But I think Sydney are being a bit disrespected in this one, and as Todd touched on, I think $2.80 currently on the Betfair exchange. I think that's sort of my, I suppose, play of the week for me. So.
I'd certainly think that they are a little bit short in that frame. And that's kind of where I'm looking in terms of the trading strategy as well. One thing that Betfair has offered, and I believe they've got all of the combinations available, is the week one multi in the finals, where you can obviously quaddy your 4 selections. So you can take a look at that and pick the one that you think stands out to you most. I've opted to go with Melbourne, Carlton, St Kilda, Brisbane at $10 as a multi at the moment. So confident on Brisbane. I think Carlton win even if they are a touch short, and then the two 50-50 games, obviously there's a bit more value around Melbourne and St Kilda, but you could easily go Collingwood and GWS or Melbourne and GWS in those games if you wanted to do. I'm looking at that for mine, Tom, as my quaddy bet on week one of the finals.
Todd, do you have any suggested plays for this week in round one of the finals?
Yeah, as we mentioned off the top, the D's and the Swans are the two edges of the week. Daz mentioned it perfectly. The D's, 50-50 flip of the coin. They're above odds in our opinion. And And the Swans, yeah, they've got their seasoned bodies, the experience against the Blues, who are making their first finals appearance in a decade. I think, the market is slightly overvalued the Swans, and the punters will benefit from it.
And Tom, if you've tipped Melbourne in that, you could look at it and go, so the two bets for you could conceivably be Melbourne, Sydney, St Kilda, Brisbane at 18s, or Melbourne, Sydney, GWS, Brisbane at 15.50.
There's always value to be found on the exchange, Daz.
Absolutely. So you can jump in there and check all of that out. Also, before we wrap things up, wanted to do a little bit more of a forecasting in terms of your premiership selection, Tom, just before we wrap it up. Is it entirely hinging on tomorrow night's game, or are you leaning towards perhaps the D's or the Lions?
I think we mentioned on last week's show, one of my strategies, Daz, was the Marcus Bontempelli into Brisbane. Marcus Bontempelli winning the Brownlow into Brisbane premiership double, and the Marcus Bontempelli into Melbourne premiership double. So I suppose I'm barracking for Melbourne and Brisbane this week to get results and get the finals off to a fast start.
And Todd, we look forward to having you in over the coming weeks and obviously building towards the grand final as well, but appreciate you giving us all of the insights.
Great to be back, guys, and look out for the Brownlow medal report on site and with Betfair coming up soon.
And of course, further evidence that Betfair and Stats Insider are on your side to deliver you the best data models to support your betting strategies throughout the AFL Finals series and of course the Brownlow and beyond. So make sure you follow us and watch Trade Talk every week. We'll be back again next week. Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.